Stays fit. Runs half marathons. Don't break the boardwalk.
Today, I'm going to talk to you about my experience running the 2024 RBC New York Road Runners Brooklyn Half. So this was my second time running the race and my third half marathon in total. Last year, I ran the race in 1 hour, 52 minutes, which comes down to a 8:23 minutes per mile. And this year, after some training for my marathon that I did in Philly, I thought I'd be faster and could hit. My initial goal time was like a 1:35, 1:38, which comes to be like 7:15 to 7:30 mile pace. Unfortunately, I sprained my ankle pretty bad about 2 months before the race started. And so my training volume certainly was not there, or what I wanted to be. So I liberalized my time and gave me a little bit more time. I initially was aiming for about a 1:38, 1:40. Spoiler alert, I just hit that goal at 1:40, 33 seconds. So the weeks leading up to the race, I was running anywhere from 10 to the peak was about 30 miles a week, which is kind of what I can afford with work and living a normal life. The last week, obviously I started to taper down, trying to give my legs a little bit of a rest. And then the last 2 nights before the race is when I started my carb loading. Here I'm at my favorite restaurant, Roberta's, getting pizza and pasta in. So I ran wave 2, which starts at 8 o'clock in the morning. I woke up around 5:30, so 2.5 hours prior to start time. There I got my coffee and my oatmeal in. The oatmeal is just to give me a little bit of carbs to lastly load up my glycogen stores. And then the coffee was to help me go number 2 and really flush out my system. Got dressed, got on the subway, and onto the start line around 7:30, and then had my second episode of number 2 in the porta potties before starting promptly at 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, now is a good time to talk about equipment. I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I really wish I was. So the shoes I ran in are the New Balance Super Comp Racers. This is version 3, the New York Marathon edition. I don't know if you can see the little logo there. These are my favorite carbon-plated racing shoe, period. I know the new one just came out. I've not got a chance to try them, but I've tried the Little Brother, the Rebel, and I love those. But they are also like $270. And I got these on StockX for under 100, brand new. I raced my marathon in them, and so they're pretty not worn out at all. There's a very lightweight carbon plate in here, which keeps them nice and springy. There's almost no fabric on top, so they're super lightweight. And I find New Balance probably the most accommodating brand for wide feet when it comes to the racing shoes. You can't tell from a lot of the videos because they're hidden in my hair, but I was wearing the Shocks headphones, which use vibration, so I can still hear through my ears. And I was listening to the Millennium Trilogy set, which is actually linked below. And then finally, for gels, I prepped 3 of the Go Gels by BPN. I ran my marathon eating Morton's, which I think works well for me, but it just tastes like absolute nothing. And I find the BPN agrees with my stomach and just tastes really nice, both their berry and their apple flavors. Oh, and lastly, this is my Apple Watch Series 9, which I use to pace myself during the race, and I use the pacing feature built in on the Apple Workouts app. Let's talk my pacing strategy. So the race is kind of broken down into 2 halves. The first half is a loop around and then within Prospect Park. Prospect Park in Brooklyn is notoriously hilly, It's also the most crowded part of the race. You're basically racing like shoulder to shoulder with people. And because I was starting in wave 2, which is a relatively slower wave, it was really hard for me to do a lot of passing. So my strategy there was keep my heart rate low. For context, my threshold is somewhere around like a 170, 175, which is kind of where I ran most of my marathon at. And so my goal was to stay below 160 for the first half, trying to keep around a 7:55, 8 minute per mile pace and just cruise through that first half. So around the 5K mark, I was about 40 seconds below my goal pace of like 750. And so had to crank it up a little bit. And then finally, when I got out of the first half of the race, I was right on track and caught up. And so after that, it was just complete straight highway, 6 lanes, spread out. I could pass whenever I wanted to. And then and there, I really just locked in. Thankfully, my legs were feeling okay at the time. So I started to push my pace to somewhere around like 7:10, 7:05. I was checking my heart rate intermittently, and I was kind of hanging out in like the 170s and starting to push in the 180s. Had my gels, one around mile 5, and then again around mile 10. And then that last bit, I was just kind of running on pure adrenaline. Unfortunately, that's when the race actually gets a little bit boring because you're just seeing the same exact highway for effectively 5 miles in a row. And then finally towards that last 2 miles, you get onto Coney Island. And so you start to see like the Ferris wheel, and then it transitions into a boardwalk. So here I am at like the final 400 meters. I was pushing myself pretty hard and somebody tries to pass me on the right. And I'm like, oh no, you are not passing me. And so with the last bit of effort I have, I go and pass him, plus I think 2 other people. And then boom, I finished. My watch was, I think, a little bit off because it overcalculated my distance at like 13.2 miles. But I ultimately finished with an official time of 1:40:33, which was fantastic. My legs felt like completely shot by the end. I could not walk the next day. Overall, I think it was a super fun experience. As much as I love the marathon, I think it's just so grueling, especially the second half, that the half marathon is challenging, but still fun for me. And so I'm pretty happy with my time. I think next year I definitely want to do it again. And if I don't get injured beforehand and keep up my training, I think I can do great. And if I went from 150 to 140 this year, definitely I think my next goal has got to be a 130. All right, so Brooklyn Half 2025, we're going for a 130 half. Let's get it.